Good afternoon. I'm Dan DeRose with 19 News Now, coming to you from our digital desk. We continue to follow breaking news like we have all day. You have noticed it surely by now. You have been outside. You have smelled it. This is nothing like what we dealt with 2 weeks ago with the Canadian wildfires and the smoke that has drifted down from our neighbors to the north. You can barely make out the silhouette of downtown Cleveland. Here's another shot from our Great Lakes Science Center camera. It looks like the fire is here. It is clearly not, but the smoke is, and that is causing major air quality problems. We had some air quality issues 2 weeks ago, but nothing like what we are dealing with today. We spoke earlier today with Dr. David Margolius with the Cleveland Board of Public Health. He called this event unprecedented for Cleveland. And all you need to do is either smell it or look at the data from the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. Cleveland currently in the very unhealthy category. That's purple. It goes from 200 to 300. We're talking about the air quality index. If you look right down here, you can see we are at a 276, a little bit better. Now, that's not great. 276 is still a terrible number, but a little bit better than where we were about an hour ago. We were at 291 as a community. We can even show you the airflow map. This is the last 24 hours. I'm going to stop it right here. This is where we currently sit, and you can see Cleveland is in the middle of that. I'm going to back this out just a little bit. You can see Cleveland in the middle of the worst of it. The only worst spot is actually out over Lake Erie right now, that maroon spot. That's when you get into what they call hazardous. But Cleveland now, we are sitting firmly in that purple area. It is not good. I'm going to put this in motion. This is where we're at currently. Here's where we were 24 hours ago. You can see the smoke move down from Canada and is now just hanging over the Cleveland area with that 291 high mark. To give you a little bit of perspective, everybody saw the very bizarre Mars looking like pictures that came out of New York City a couple of weeks ago. They were well into the 400s that day. So us sitting at 291 is a high. While that's not great, it's not where New York City was a couple of weeks ago. But we need some perspective on this, and we always like to bring in experts to help us understand what's going on. We're going to welcome in Brian Krupp. He is a professor with Baldwin Wallace University. His research team was recently given funding by the National Science Foundation for air quality sensor research around Cleveland. I mean, this is his area of expertise. Professor Krupp, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
We spoke when we a few months ago when we were talking about East Palestine and the air quality there. Now here we are sitting in the middle of this wildfire smoke issue. Give us some perspective. I said earlier, Dr. Margolius described this as unprecedented. As somebody who is an expert in sensors that monitor the air, how would you describe what we're going through right now?
It truly is unprecedented. When we take a look at research that looks at installing air quality monitors, throughout the world, these are numbers that we don't see here in the United States. Typically, we see these in maybe in larger urban areas in India or in China, but this is something that we don't experience here in the States.
Let's talk about the level. We're sitting at 291. I hope I'm not springing this on you. Do we know what Cleveland's record is for ever reading the air quality index?
Yeah, I don't know that offhand, but typically what we find is we do have an air quality monitor installed out in the region, and we do follow what the EPA regional monitor is. And typically we're usually below 50 for most of the time. We do see some spikes that might go, above that. Interestingly enough, we saw a spike on the 4th of July, due to the fireworks, but that was, just a, small amount of time. But usually we're under that 50 mark. So for us to be, way above and to the above 200 is pretty alarming. A sensor I have installed in my home this morning, when I turn it on and I looked at the readout, it was 358 this morning in my home. Now I'm a little bit closer to a lake, so the fog could have had an impact on that as well. But that's really high. That is unprecedented.
Let's talk about comparison. We're not going to give you the medical questions. We had Dr. Margolius earlier, who is encouraging people to stay inside. He told us, treat today like a bad weather day, stay inside, find work to do inside, shouldn't be out mowing the lawn, shouldn't be out running. And we're not talking just people with breathing issues. We're talking everybody here. Give us some perspective as far as, is it bad when it's at 100? Is it bad at 200? Is it incredibly worse when we see levels? We were darn near 300 this morning.
Right. Yeah. Usually when we get above 50 is when people that have asthma or chronic conditions that they have to maybe adjust the things that they do. When we get to this level, as you noted earlier, it's not safe for anybody, whether it's younger or adult or elder or people with chronic conditions. So I think the advice of staying indoors is the right advice. Keep the windows closed. I have a whole house fan running inside, and that the filter is catching, some of the particles. And the readout as of late was 137. So I went from 358 this morning to 137. 137 still isn't good, but it is a lot better than the air outside. And so even if you have to drive around, I would also recommend keeping the windows up, keeping the air bridge circulation on. Don't let that new air come in from the outside, because any air filter you might have in your car is just having to work a little bit harder and then trap those particles.
Yeah, and we were discussing that. Not a lot of people know what that button does. It generally shows your car and in like a half circle with an arrow on it. That's the recirculation button, so that it's only pulling air from inside. Let's talk about what the average person should be doing at home. You said close my windows. Should I not turn on my air conditioning? Should I leave the air conditioning off? You said you've turned on your whole house fan. A lot of HVAC has a fan option to keep a fan going. What should people be doing, and what if you don't have good HVAC?
Yeah, so exactly that. So if today's not that warm of a day, so the AC may not kick on. Maybe you can set it a little bit lower just to kind of get some circulation in the air and let that filter trap it. But if you do have that whole house fan option, I would definitely recommend turning that on. If you do have an indoor air purifier, obviously that will help too, but it may not be able to filter out the entire air in the house. There is an ionizing feature on there. I wouldn't recommend turning that on because that does increase the ozone in the air. But if you do have that whole house fan, keep the windows closed, turn that on. And then if you don't have that, if you have a box fan, you can take a filter that you would insert into your HVAC system. You can put that behind, make sure that you have the arrow on that filter pointing to where the air is getting pulled, and that can also help too.
Boy, that's an interesting idea. Never thought about doing that, putting an air filter on the back of your fan. Very interesting there. We're speaking with Brian Krupp. He's a professor with Baldwin Wallace University and an expert in the area of air quality sensors and readings. Professor, we always like to leave the final word with our guests, whether it's perspective, whether it's where do we go from here, what does the rest of the day look like. You get the final word.
I would just say for the audience that hasn't checked out airnow.gov, and you pulled that up earlier, keep an eye on that. Even though the forecast may show that it's going to be decreasing a little bit tomorrow, it's still in that area where you might want to take some precautions and just continue to keep an eye on that. Just like the weather here in Cleveland, the air quality can be unpredictable. So you just want to keep an eye on that and just adjust your activities, and definitely today stay indoors.
Professor Krupp, your knowledge is extremely beneficial for our viewers. As we've said over and over and over, we are in an unprecedented time here, and it's time to take notice and maybe adjust some of the things you were planning on doing today, tomorrow, and in the coming days. Professor, we appreciate the time. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
All right, take care. Again, this is what we've been doing all day, bringing you the experts, helping you stay informed on what's going on, because as we look at downtown again, it is not a pretty picture by any means. Here's another look at our Great Lakes Science Center camera, and in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to double check our EPA map again. As we look here, we can see as it resets, this is early this morning, and here we are last night, 10 p.m., 11 p.m. There's midnight right there, and you can see what it's done. It's just progressively crawled down from Canada here to our area, and we can look again. I want to reset this just to make sure we were at 276. We're at 254. We are receding, but we are nowhere near where we need to be. We just heard Professor Krupp say in a normal day, Cleveland should be at about a 50, and here we are at 250. So there is still a situation here in Northeast Ohio that you need to be protecting you and your family from. Just staying away from the outdoors is a great idea today. Our noon news is just about 40 minutes away on Channel 19. Until then, I'm Dan DeRose with 19 News. Have a good afternoon.
19 News is everywhere. Download our CTV apps and follow us on social media @Cleveland